This here is a watch magazine called Hodinki Japan, and in here, this is a photograph I took for them. Back in October, I had the honour to shoot for Hodinki, and in this video I would like to share this story and bring you along on the shoot and share my approach and process for this project. So this story begins back in October when I was still in Japan. I had somewhat randomly landed this freelance gig thanks to a kind man I got to know at an exhibition, Masaharu Wada, who is an editor and web producer for Hodinki Japan. He asked me if I'd like to do a photo shoot for a little section in the magazine, and I of course said yes because that sounds really cool. It all went quite fast, and one day I was on my way to his office to meet him to get to know everything about the project, what he's looking for, and also pick up the watch that he wanted me to photograph. Due to some time constraints, I had to get the job done in 1 week, and so on that day when I was heading home with the watch in my backpack, I was already thinking about a couple concepts for this shoot. Let's briefly talk about the watch that he gave me to photograph. This is a Lange Lange 1. You must know, at that time I knew very little about watches and I had never heard of this brand. But, well, turns out this is a very renowned luxury watch brand, highly regarded for its exceptional craftsmanship. In fact, it is one of the most important German luxury brands. Its history dates all the way back to 1845 when the watchmaker Ferdinand Adolf Lange founded the company in Glashütte in Sachsen, also known as Saxony in English. The company made high quality stuff and so they rose to fame. However, about 100 years later, you know, the 1940s in Germany, well, actually everywhere around the world, were rough times and let's say the company had some complications. After World War II in 1948, the company ceased to exist as it was nationalised following the occupation by the Soviet Union. But fast forward a couple decades and in 1990, Ferdinand Adolf Lange's great-grandson, Walter Lange, re-registered the company and the watchmaking continued, and it was shortly after that that they introduced the Lange 1, the watch that I was going to photograph. So what was the job? What was I supposed to photograph? Basically, I landed a photographer's dream gig, I'd say, because I was asked to shoot the watch in my photographic style. Do what I do, but with the watch. The occasion for this shoot, by the way, was the 30-year anniversary of the Lange 1, and so it'd be nice to celebrate that in the next issue of the magazine. But apart from that, there weren't really many points to work off of. The main objective seemed to be that Wada-san wanted to see this watch portrayed or featured in a photo series in my style. So on the day that I picked up the watch, I was heading home and thinking of possible concepts. I had some rough ideas, both conceptually and visually, but nothing too specific yet. However, something I was already quite sure about is that I'd like to work with pockets of light. Sunlight shining into the apartment or through a tree's leaves that puts a natural spotlight onto the watch. And so once I got back home, I actually immediately began shooting because the sun was at this perfect angle that created a sliver of light in the kitchen. Okay, I just came home. I wasn't actually planning to shoot this now, but look at this light. I think I just have to make use of this. So I just put the watch onto my arm and yeah. I just want to see if there's something I can spontaneously make because I just want to make use of this light. It was overcast all day, so I'm very happy that the sun is out now. I haven't really made a plan for this shoot and project overall yet, but you know, this kind of goes in my direction, so let's just try something out anyway. Sorry. So, the light is out. So as you can see, I decided to shoot this project digitally. Of course, it would have been really cool to shoot this on film, however, due to the time constraints and the other work I had to do in this week, I wanted to maximise the reliability and speed, for which digital is simply better. And for these first photos, I just took the GX80 because it's so light and easy to use, especially when I only have one hand available, seeing as the other is the model. I've lost my light, so I guess that was it for this test shoot. So these first shots I actually think turned out really cool. I love the lighting and how the hand throws a shade onto the background. Even though this was intended as a test shot, I was quite fond of these already. Then, in the next couple of days, I didn't really do that much. The project was at the back of my mind, and I always had an open eye for some interesting light and opportunities, but I wasn't really focused yet because I actually had a bunch of other work to finish, and the weather wasn't really that great anyway. However, on this afternoon, the sun did peek out again in the evening, shining this wonderful warm and harsh light onto the table. I saw this as an opportunity to get some more shots that were still more of a warm-up and not definitely intended to be sent out. Also, at this time, I still hadn't precisely defined the concept of the shoot, and so in the following days, that was one of my main tasks. I collected my thoughts, peeked further into the world of watches to better understand the brand and this niche in general, and collected reference photographs to piece together a rough visual direction I want to move into. For this process, I used this tool called Milanote, which I'd highly recommend to you for projects of this sort. Last year, they became a partner of this channel, and today they are back to sponsor this video because I thought this video is the perfect fit for a collaboration with them. Milanote is essentially a tool to organize your creative projects. Imagine a big whiteboard where you can place sticky notes, photos, and cards just on your laptop. It's a very open and unstructured workplace where you can easily begin with just idea dumping and then get things organized. So personally, that really suits me because I like to just dump my thoughts and then sort of move them around and find my direction from there. Two major highlights in my opinion are, firstly, it's free. There is a paid version, but even the free version allows you to do a lot, and there's no time limit, so you can easily try it out. And secondly, it's so easy. I think the main difficulty with tools of this type is that it can be faster and easier to simply use pen and paper, but Milanote is honestly very intuitive and easy. You do not need a tutorial, it's very straightforward. And if you need a head start, Milanote has over 100 built-in templates. Something I love for its simplicity, for example, is that I can be browsing images on Pinterest and then simply click copy and then paste the image in Milanote. So making mood boards is an incredibly smooth process. Oh, and one more thing, it is also great for collaborations because you can invite others to join your board. Anyway, I think you should try it out. I mean, it's free, so why not? There's a link in the description to sign up to Milanote for free. Thank you so much to Milanote for sponsoring this video. And now let's talk about the concept I came up with for the shoot. So I was thinking, what approach or concept could I base this shoot off of? Part of this job that I actually haven't told you about yet is that I also needed to write a little text, just some words about the photographs, and so I was reading through a couple paragraphs in the magazine that I had received as a reference. In some of the text, there was a strong emphasis on the intriguing nature of not just watches, but actually the concept of time itself. And that spun my thoughts further, and I realized something. In a way, cameras and watches are connected, yet they are opposites. Hear me out. Both cameras and watches are little mechanical machines that can have some incredible craftsmanship behind them, and both of them are connected to time, however in opposite ways. A camera's purpose is to capture a moment in time, a bit like freezing time. It produces a physical manifestation of a little piece of time, like this here is a 1/25th of a second, so a little moment. The camera froze it, and I can now hold it in my hand. The watch, on the other hand, is a physical representation of the unstoppable passage of time. You can't really see time. I mean, technically you could watch the sun rise and set and then rise again and count that as a day, but it's so slow that you can't really recognize the motion. But with a watch, you can literally see every second pass by. In that sense, cameras and watches are opposites. However, both can be a companion to a photographer, one around the wrist and one in the hand. As a photographer searches for pockets of light to capture, the watch allows them to peek into pockets of time whenever they dare to look at it and witness the steady march forward so clearly. And so with this realization, I thought it'd be cool to lean into this concept and sort of portray the watch as a companion to a photographer and oppose the two, the camera and the watch. I had been continuously experimenting with different shots of the watch and got some decent results and some variety just to further expand my ideas.
なんかとにかくちょっと景色を見てるの。
あ、そう。
顔出ないけど。けどゆっくりお願いします。 スローモーション。
はい。
I was trying an interesting technique that I was quite fond of. I was using the Sony a7 III now in order to make use of the high burst rate that the camera is capable of. I set my shutter speed pretty low to around, I think it was 1/10, and then attempted to track the watch with the camera while moving to create some motion blur. Here is one of the results that I think turned out quite nicely, and this evening I decided that this is the visual direction I'd like to further explore on my final day of shooting. Good morning. It is a fine day, finally, and so hopefully I'll be able to shoot most of what I still need today with the sun out, because I think this is the only sunny day that I have left, and I'm currently heading to the 2 locations, and let's see what we can do today. Alright, we're not at location yet, but I'm getting out the camera already because I need some of these sort of miscellaneous shots anyway.
Todas migalhas do passado vão viver tempo de glória. Pois é, o tempo de Deus não tem.
With my thoughts gathered and the concept defined, I got lucky and was blessed with a fine sunny morning on my last day of this shoot. So it was crucial actually that this worked out, because I didn't have any time left after this. As you can see here, I was not only shooting photos of the watch, but also somewhat random shots. That is because this too was part of the project. My job was to not only photograph the watch, but create a photo series in my style that has watch photos integrated. And so on my way to the location, I began shooting as I usually would on a morning like this one. I think this shot really follows that concept I was talking about, the pockets of light. I love this spotlight effect, and so I was aiming to find such spotlights in my surroundings, and later also use them to spotlight the watch.
Pois é, as coisas chegam quando passam. Se o que aconteceu de errado, veja bem pelo outro lado, é o que faz você agora. Todas migalhas do passado vão viver tempo de glória.
Here I decided to make my first stop to shoot the watch. I was fond of these rocks next to the water. It's simply a very pretty scene, and so I thought maybe this is a good place to start. So here are some of the shots I got at the rocks. So far, nothing really good. This one is okay, but really not particularly good in any way. But hey, it's just the start of the shoot. Next, I decided to play around with some props on the rock here. I had brought a notebook and otherwise my little bag where I keep my Olympus XA3 when out and about. And also my backpack can be a prop. So here are some of the results, and we are moving in the right direction. I find these more interesting than the ones before, though they do still feel quite Instagram lifestyle photography-esque, which isn't necessarily bad, but not actually what I was going for. Finally, before moving on, I got a few more straightforward product shots of the watch in a similar environment. These I didn't really shoot thinking that this strongly represents my style or anything. These were thought as obligatory shots and safety shots because while I was asked to shoot in my style, I'm sure that some mildly classic product photos or close-ups are still desired. This one I actually like a lot. It's so simple, literally just me holding up the watch to the camera, but the setting at the back looks nice and the lighting is so pretty that the photo manages to express a warm, natural feeling, which I enjoy.
Okay, let's move on to a different spot.
Then, as I was walking to the next location, I thought that actually my hand holding my backpack and the tripod could maybe be a neat shot, so why not just get a shot and move on in case I happen to like it later when selecting the photographs. And yeah, I think it's actually quite nice. I really love the lighting with the dark shade on the right.
Just got hit by acorns.
As I continue to walk, I also got some more non-watch shots here and there. I really like this one. I love how the sun hits the water and illuminates the rocks below.
Maybe to the right there. Ooh, that look. Oh, yes, that is exactly what I'm looking for. Oh, yes. That is perfect. Oh, that's just perfect.
So here I found exactly what I was looking for. The splatters of sunlight that come through the leaves create a beautiful pattern that I can make use of for the photography. Here I just shot a couple everyday carry type of photos with my hand reaching to the bag. And then I shot a bunch of more classic product photos of this scene. Here are some of them, and I think you can see quite clearly now the beauty of the lighting here that I was trying to capture. By the way, as you've probably noticed, for all of these photos I went with a warm and slightly contrasty look. These edits are all based off of my Asagaya Lightroom preset. If you're interested in my presets, color grading tutorials and such, you can find everything on my Patreon, just wanted to let you know. There's a link in the description. Then I set up another scene and dialed in the interval shooting mode on the Sony so that it just shoots automatically while I try to position my arms and the watch in frame. I think this one turned out quite nicely. I love how the sun just hits some select areas with the brightest bit of light of course highlighting the watch. And then I continued to shoot the same setup, but this time without me, just the watch.
Everybody seems to know that I'm the one who crossed the line, and it got me lost. Everybody.
Something I enjoy here are the reflections from the watch that add an extra pattern to the notebook.
it got me lost.
Next, it was time to try the shots with motion blur. I decided to get multiple versions, some of just my wrist with the watch, then one with my bag, and then with the Pentax in my hand. Sadly, you can't really see too much in the GoPro footage, sorry about that, I should have tilted the GoPro further down. But essentially, I was again tracking the watch with my camera as I moved my entire body and shot in burst mode. In this perspective that I also recorded, you can make out what I'm doing a bit better, I think. By the way, I did this underneath the leaves here on purpose, of course, in order to catch just the right moment when the watch is highlighted by the sunlight. Thus, it was very helpful that I could shoot this with the Sony a7 III and use the incredible burst mode. Taking these shots on film sounds like a nightmare to me. Anyway, let's look at the results. I really like these, the concept seems to be working. I love the look of the world in motion in the background while the watch stays sharp. This one in particular stands out to me. The way the light hits the hand and the watch just looks so pretty, and it was these shots of me holding the camera that made me decide to try a couple more photos with the camera to further underline the concept of the watch being a photographer's companion. Here I was getting a couple shots of me handling the camera. These turned out alright, not outstanding, but still very nice I find. I then tried the motion arm shots again, but this time I wore my black sweater to change up the style a little and have sleeves instead of my bare arms. I also slightly covered the watch with the sleeve just to make it a little more subtle. Here are some that I think turned out quite alright. I like these, however, this one clearly stood out to me. This photo just worked in my eyes. While I do really like the short sleeve version I shot before, I love this one too. It has an overall slightly darker feel because about a third of the frame is black. Something else though that I enjoy a lot are the leaves that are quite present in the composition and add a nice touch of extra colour to the image. Finally, I tried a couple more medium close shots of my arms as they handled the camera. In the intervalometer mode, my camera doesn't track focus, and so some of these turned out blurry, which was an accident, but they actually look kind of interesting. It gives only a slight impression of the photographer and the watch, which has some character of its own, I find. So maybe these accidental shots can turn out to be quite useful. We'll see. Here's one more shot that I got at the very end of my morning, just a basic close-up, keeping things simple and clear. And that was the end of the shoot. The sun had risen quite high at this point, and so did my morning exhaustion. Thus, I headed home with all of these photos in order to go through the whole selecting and editing process, which is what I spent my time doing for the rest of the day. And then on the next day, I finished everything off and sent off the selection of photos plus my little text for review. By the way, here are the photographs I selected, my favourites you could say. I actually ended up sending out quite a variety, including the first shots that I took, which were actually just warm-ups and initially not intended to be submitted. However, I thought they actually added some nice diversity to the set. I did also send an extra folder with variations and other shots that I personally didn't like as much, but knowing that for the sake of design and layout, other shots might be better suited, I sent them out as possible alternatives to my selection. And so with that, the job was done, and in December I received a copy of the magazine. And at the very back I spotted some familiar photos. So of all the photos I shot, these are the ones that got selected. And something quite interesting that you can see here is that the accidentally blurry shot made it onto the page. I'm really honoured to see my photographs printed in the Hodinki Japan magazine, so thank you very much to Wada-san for giving me this opportunity. It was great fun to work on this project. I hope you had some fun too, joining me on this little journey as I worked on my first ever Japanese freelance gig. Before saying goodbye, I would also like to say a big thank you to the lovely people supporting me and my work on Patreon. Thank you so much to each one of you. If you're interested in my Lightroom presets, tutorials and stuff like that, you can check out my page via the link in the description. Also, I have a print shop, by the way, in case that is of interest to you, also in the description. With that said, I hope to see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.